I'm going to actually read this because this is kind of interesting. This is on an Orwell video called Why J. Dyer Banned Me. I'm just going to read this and respond to it because it just came in as I was going through this. But I guess I'll just read my comment first, which is kind of long. But if you're interested, this is sort of about something called the problem of universals, which I guess it's been a very long-standing problem in philosophy, but, well, it's created by a lack of understanding of knowledge. Okay. Anyway, the problem is, you might say, well, horses are real. I can see them running around and taking craps and stuff. Cows are real. Pigs are real. But what about the category horse? Is that real? Or is that just subjective, I guess you could say? I guess that's the problem. I mean, if you're really interested in it, you can read the Wikipedia entry on the problem of universals, which I think is one of these non-problems. It's not a really interesting philosophical problem. It just seems like a problem because people don't think clearly about knowledge and the subject-object distinction. So I said, most philosophical problems arise from subject-object confusions, or at least revolve around that distinction. The problem of universals is one of them. Are categories real? Well, no, in the sense that they are mind stuff, but also yes, in the sense that reality must be ordered in some way that gives those categories predictive power, right? So there is an underlying reality, that there is a pattern, horse, that exists in reality, and then there is a category, horse, that exists in the brain. And the brain uses that category to label individual instances of that type, right? So we have the concept and we have a real type, and the real type is a causal regularity, right? And the reason why one horse is like another horse is because they're descended from the same ancestors, and that type evolved. So there are real regularities, real order in objective reality, but we should not confuse that order with the concepts that we use to represent it and to understand reality. Okay. I've tried to make this point before, but I know a lot of people find this stuff confusing because there's no way to think about that order that's out there without imposing some concept on it, and so it's very easy to become confused and say, well, but isn't the concept the same as the order? And the answer is, well, in a way, because you're bringing some of that order into your brain, right? You may not get all of it. That doesn't mean what's in your brain is exactly the same as the regularity in reality. It just means that your brain has captured some of the order of reality, and that makes it possible to predict and control reality. That's why you're not as surprised. You're not surprised by everything. You go out the door, you don't suddenly fall into the abyss. You don't just plunge into the ocean or something. Or a pink dinosaur doesn't grab you and hug you, right? You know that when you walk out the door, you're going to go into the next room, and then whatever. Like, what's there. Like, if it's the kitchen, okay, I'm going to see the fridge there and the stove there and yada yada. But you have to understand that our brains can abstract from experience. We can abstract concepts that capture regularity in the real world, but the regularity of the real world is not it's not the exact same thing, right? I don't know how to explain it. What we capture is only a representation of that reality. Okay, anyway, I said I haven't really listened to Dyer, but it sounds like he is trying to bridge the subject-object gap with God, claiming that God somehow gives us access to real categories, a real foundation for knowledge, etc. In that view, the subject has objective grounding, because it somehow partakes of objective godhood. As I understand it, your view is a version of idealism, in which objectivity is subsumed by subjectivity. I know that's a very simple paraphrase. What I propose is that we have no objective foundation. We are subjects who represent reality using categories/concepts. Some aspects of our condition are inescapable. To Dyer's question, how can you trust reason? I would answer that I have no choice. I am reason. If I reject reason, then I would have to reject my rejection of reason. I would fall into a paradox. Those paradoxes of self-reference show us the inescapable, you could say metaphysical, presuppositions of thought, and thus of our condition as thinking beings. I can doubt my reason, and I don't think it has any objective foundation or ultimate certainty. However, I have no alternative to it. I can't escape from myself. That's the only sense in which we have a foundation. And then someone named Jason Roberts said, reason is in flux. How can you build a foundation on something in flux? The entire modern world is built on a foundation of rationalism, and then in parentheses, sand. That's why it's now crumbling before our eyes. And in response to that, I said, foundation is a bad metaphor. We don't have a foundation. We have a nature. Your question, how can you build a foundation on something in flux, is itself an appeal to reason. Any argument you make against reason will be an appeal to reason. As for the modern world being built on a foundation of rationalism, that's not a good description of modernity. The modern world was created by unleashing the power of rationality in certain areas, science, technology, and the free market. Rationality generated enormous progress in those areas. However, in other areas we have relied on intuition and faith. The problems and failures of the modern world lie in the areas that we refuse to think about. All right, and then this guy named Sociologo da USP, and it looks like he has a picture of Foucault as his icon, said, we don't deny reason because reason is a faculty of humans, just like intuition, contemplating, poiesis, etc. The problem is trying to ground an ultimate principle in reason, which is part of a finite human mind. That was the problem with Kant, and that's the problem with modern scientism. I also found funny that you say that modern free market, technology and science are good and fruits of reason. In a sense, they are actually fruits of humans shutting down any type of reference to a transcendental source, which is ultimately problematic since humans are transcendental beings. They are between heaven and earth, so to speak. I mean, this guy's just talking nonsense, right? These people just they fap to their little idols of spirit dust. Somehow we're between heaven and earth. I mean, this is just nonsense. This is poetic bullshit. No, we're very down to earth. We're beings of blood and guts. Okay? We eat and shit every fucking day. Alright? There's nothing transcendental about us. He's just like, anyway, whatever. Don't get me wrong, he said. I'll go back to reading his thing. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good in science, technology, etc. But when you cut down the metaphysical or religious referent, you end up with technocracy and the enslavement by big tech, which is what is happening today. So what these guys do, I'll just explain what's going on here. This guy is diagnosing things in such a way that his ideal, which is some kind of religion, is the solution, and the absence of his ideal is the problem. Is he making any kind of argument that that's the case? Is he pointing out how the problems of the modern world are due to the absence of this transcendental fappiness, or whatever the fuck this thing is? The religion, let's say? Has he provided any evidence of this? Like, I can explain the problems of modernity very simply. We solved a whole bunch of problems, but that created a whole bunch of new problems, because that's how reality works. You solve one problem, you create a new problem. Okay, so we solved the problem, at least for now, of hunger. And we solved the problem of catastrophic war with nuclear weapons and colonialism, ironically. The left hates to think about it that way, but that's the truth. It was colonialism, Western colonialism, and the New World Order created by that, and nuclear weapons that have protected most of humanity from horrific warfare over the last 70 years or whatever it's been. And also we gave people new forms of agency with birth control and the sexual revolution. And I mean, there are lots of, I've explained all this stuff before, right? So I know exactly what causes the problems of the modern world. It's not because we let go of the magic sky fairy or some concept like that. Although what we should do, we should let go of the magic sky fairy, but that doesn't mean that we just come up with some new religion and start worshiping ourselves or whatever, or worshiping nature. There are solutions to our problems, but they require rationality. They require thought. They don't require belief in a sky fairy. In fact, they require that we stop believing in things like morality. That we accept it for what it is. It's collective value. It's not magic. It's not mystical, moral fairy dust that floats around in the moral, there should be a word for that, right? For this imaginary moral dimension of reality. All right. Anyway, I don't really know how to respond to this guy. All right, I'm recording this later after a number of additional back and forth comments. All right, so here's my response to what he said. His new name is now Foucault Riassa. I'm not sure what that means. I said, we don't have to ground anything. I explained that. There is no grounding. Reason is not a foundation. It's an inescapable aspect of the human condition. The rest of what you said is an appeal to fairy dust. We're not transcendental beings. The problems of the modern world are not due to the absence of religion or mysticism. Modern problems arose out of solutions, e.g., industrial agriculture and medicine solved old problems of hunger and disease, but also created new problems of dysgenics and overpopulation. And then this Foucault Riassa guy said, if we don't need to ground anything, then there's no reason to justify God, religion, or any normative philosophy really. It just is. I don't think you really want to go that route because it would be self-defeating to any worldview, including yours. The second part is partially correct. Absolutely, things that are nominal good create other types of problems, like you said. But humans aren't machines, they follow things. Ultimately, they have a worldview, which gives them coherence in every aspect of their life. To say we don't need religion is just a statement. It just is, which ends in a relativistic solipsism. In short, you, like modern scientism, is just, he means you are, but anyway, is just shutting down the possibility of anything immaterial, which is self-refuting by itself, since we're always making reference to immaterial and abstract objects and categories. But then again, you don't question your views, and since we don't need grounding, it just is, with no apparent reason whatsoever. So this is, I'm just going to mention this, this is a kind of fallacy that people make. It's either we have some kind of objective grounding for it, or it's just totally arbitrary, I just made it up, whatever. But instead, and like I said at the beginning of this, we have a nature. So we don't have a ground, we can't find a ground, we can't reason to a ground of reason, but reason is a process that's baked into our brains, right? So like I can't look out the window at the tree and not believe that the tree is there. I just can't do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to believe the tree is there. Okay, I'm going to do lots of things. I'm going to run away from a bear if it chases me. When I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. So it doesn't mean I can find an ultimate purpose for eating, that I can find in logic or rationality or whatever, some ultimate purpose, and then use that to derive, I should eat. No, I'm just going to eat, because that's what I do. And I can't prove that the tree is there or that my method of judgment is correct or any of those things. But I can't escape from it either. So this is the thing. It's not that there's no choice between some ultimate objective grounding and pure arbitrariness, relativism or whatever. All right, anyway, let me read what I said here. I said, no, you just assume that you need to ground things, but there is no way to ground them outside yourself. Where does this need for grounding come from? I'm just asking him, where is the ground of grounding? Can you ground the need to ground? No. We don't derive our worldviews deductively from certain axioms. They arise out of our experience and our nature. I can't help but induce knowledge from experience, because that is what my brain does. I am also capable of questioning the process of induction and recognizing that my categories are mind stuff, not objective reality itself. And then I quoted him saying, in short, you, like modern scientism, is just shutting down the possibility of anything immaterial, which is self-refuting by itself, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and then I said, no, that is just a straw man. I have questioned my beliefs very thoroughly, which is why I believe that there is no objective basis for them. The notion of materialist is also a silly straw man. At the beginning of the original comment, I explained the relation between abstract categories and reality. Things do not have to be grounded to have an apparent reason. Reason is in us. E.g., my brain rejects contradictions, and thus contradictions are not reasonable to me. That is part of my nature. All right, and then I don't think he responded again, did he? No, I don't think so, but there are a number of other people. Well, there's one other guy, Brandon, who then picks it up. I'll just respond to a little bit of his stuff too. He said, I'm curious about your position. Aren't you being arbitrary by declaring the reason just is? So it's funny because he's quoting the other guy's straw man of me, right? He's not quoting something I said. He's quoting the other guy's straw man version of what I believe. People do this. I mean, they just do it. All right, so he said, aren't you being arbitrary by declaring the reason just is? You haven't provided sufficient justification for this. I think we should have a reason for the things we believe in. And I said, I'm not sure what you're quoting. Could you quote the full sentence? We're arbitrary in the sense that we are making judgments from a subjective perspective, not from a universal perspective. I can't escape from that type of arbitrariness. I can't make judgments with anything other than my brain. So all my judgments depend on my brain. I can't eliminate that dependency. Where do you think reasons come from? What is your reason for believing we should have a reason for the things we believe in? All right, so then he said, I am quoting where you said reason is a fundamental aspect of human nature. Here's what he claims is a quote of that. He said, aren't you being arbitrary by declaring the reason just is? And then he claims that's a quote. He's quoting me saying reason is a fundamental aspect of human nature. That's not quite the same thing, right? Anyway, he then said, I'm just wondering what your explanation is for how reason exists. I think reason comes from a being that is transcendental, universal, all of the omnis, and uniform, which is what I would call God. All of the omni. So he's omni. It's an omni. He's like omni shitty. He's omni bad, omni good, omni stupid, omni intelligent, or omniscient, or whatever, right? Yeah, okay. And then he said, my reason for believing we should have a reason for the things we believe in is the principle of sufficient reason, which rests on God as the foundation for logic reason slash transcendentals. I said, The brain is an organ for generating complex behavior. Like all other organs, its form evolved by natural selection. The process of generating behavior has functional components, such as induction, thought, emotion, and attention. Reason is a fundamental aspect of human nature because we have brains that use thought to generate behavior. What is your reason for believing in the principle of sufficient reason? See, I'm just playing this game with him where I'm like, he said we must have a reason for what we believe in, and so I'm asking him for his reason. I'm going to keep doing it recursively. Anyway, then I said, spoiler, you're not going to find an objective ground for anything. That's the point of the cogito. And then he said, if there is no objective ground for anything, then your argument is subjective. Therefore, I choose to think it's wrong. See how that is self-defeating? And I said, lol, no, it's not self-defeating at all. I'm just describing the human condition as I understand it. Our beliefs ultimately depend on our brains, and we have no higher authority or objective foundation to appeal to. Yes, you are free to reject anything I say. However, you aren't free to believe anything because you have a nature, as I said. Your brain is not a random idea generator. Rational argumentation is based on the belief that the other person has a similar kind of brain that works in a similar way. An appeal to reason is not an appeal to an objective external authority. It is an appeal to the authority of the other subject. I can't compel you to believe something. I can only present you with reasons that I find compelling. Then he said, we have no higher authority or objective foundation to appeal to. Please demonstrate that this is objectively true. See, so I claim I don't believe in objective truth, so obviously I can't show that it's objectively true. I'm just making a claim from my subjective perspective. And he then said, if you can't, it is subjective, and therefore I can reject it or believe it's not true. Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, this is just the guy going in circles, right? He said, you're assuming the other person has the same reason that you do, therefore you're assuming it's objective. No, I'm not assuming it. It's just, it's a kind of assumption based on the fact that, yes, based on your behavior and your actions, I assume you have a brain, and the brain works more or less like mine, because we are similar. That doesn't mean that there's objective grounding, that your brain is objectively grounded in something. It just means it's analogical. It's analogous to mine. Not that we have the same underlying... you could say we have the same kind of nature, right? That doesn't mean we both are tied to God by some, fiber of something. I don't know what. Anyway, he said, if it's not objective, how can you know that you are obeying the same laws of logic? And I said, you're just ignoring what I say and repeating yourself. I'd be willing to debate in voice recorded if you're interested. And he said, I'm down if you want to switch mediums. You just ignored what I said. No, I didn't, but whatever. I'm not engaging with the rest of the argument because the basis is wrong. If you reject an objective source of reason, the rest of your argument is invalid because it is subjective. Prove it. Show me the objective ground for that claim. Anyway, so I offered to have a discussion in Skype, and then he said, can you just add me on Instagram? So like, what the fuck? I didn't even know Instagram allows you to do discussions, but anyway, I just said, well, whatever. Go on Skype or Discord. Yeah, but this idea that we need an objective ground to say anything or do anything, it's just this arbitrary, ironically ungrounded, unjustified assumption that these people just believe. They just think you must have a ground, you must have a reason, you must be able to give a reason for everything. And of course they can't give a reason for that, or for their belief in God, or for anything, really. They can't give an ultimate reason for anything. So, anyway, all right, I think I'll end that there.